Hey, do you have an idea for a podcast but don't know where to start? Or do you have an already existing podcast that you want to take to the next level? Well, check out WeKnowPodcasting.com. From concept development to theme music to editing to logos, WeKnowPodcasting.com is a one-stop shop for all things pod. Don't hesitate to hit us up. We're very nice.
Everybody, welcome to Horror Movie Night. This week, we are talking about a film that I don't think anyone's ever heard of. I barely knew this movie, called Funnyman, which somehow features Christopher Lee, which is like a dead zone for him in the 90s. But let me real quickly go through how I found out about this movie, and then we'll dive into finding out how you guys felt about this movie. But my friends Mark and Laura traditionally would have a Halloween party every October, and I would put together these kill compilations, and we would play them on the TV. And maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I was at one of those parties, and their friend Joey came up to me and was like, "Yo, man, you need to check out this movie, Funnyman, because it's got a ton of kills that would be great for your kill compilation." And so, sitting on the couch, I went on Amazon.com, saw that I could buy a used copy for under $9, and had the DVD shipped to me, and I watched it and immediately was like, yeah, we could get an episode out of this. so I put it on the long list. Here we are. Now, Scott, you had texted me months ago thanking me for Funnyman, but I don't know if you had watched it yet or you had just Googled the images to send me.
It was the images. Yeah, there's an image that I assume that we used. I don't know because I send them off to you and then you do what you will with them. But there was an image where Funnyman who's basically he's Punch from the Punch and Judy show. Like, let's just get that out of the way.
Yeah.
They have him looking at a porn mag, like looking, he's got the centerfold out or whatever. And it's very obvious that his codpiece is supposed to be a boner. But, I mean, that's his look. Like, the codpiece looks like the front of, like, the genie's shoes in Aladdin, but massive, like, diaper. And I was just like, this is going to be a good time. This is exactly the kind of stupidity that I stick around Horror Movie Night for.
And did you enjoy it when you finally sat down and watched it?
It was all right. I feel like it kind of had higher expectations than what it could actively do for me. It was one of those movies where it's hard to explain. Let me see if I can put it into words correctly. It was a good watch that I don't think I'll ever rewatch.
I think that's fair. I think the only other time that I'll watch this is if I have like another weird movie night where there's like a group of people over and I can watch it with a crowd, because I feel like this would be like a crowd pleaser type movie. But the only 2 times I've watched it have been alone, so it's not exactly a laugh out loud hilarious film.
I've talked about on this show many times is that, like, I almost exclusively watch horror alone. I don't consume fresh horror with other people, and I haven't pretty much my entire life.
Here's the problem with me. And Brian, you can maybe back this up a little bit.
How much time we got today?
but my first exposure to horror stuff really was Scream, right?
Yeah.
And as soon as I watched Scream, I was like, I want to be Randy. So, like, my vision of watching a horror movie is like 40 people in a living room while you're monologuing to them.
That explains so much about you and the reason why Horror Movie Night exists.
Yeah, so it's like for me, it's like, oh man, this is awful. I can't wait for a bunch of people to come over. We're going to get some drinks. We're going to get some pizza. We're going to just have a good night, and we're going to watch these bad movies, and we're going to be talking over top of them, and we're going to be laughing the whole time, and everyone's going to say, yay, Matt, and they're going to pick me up on a chair and go, hip, hip, hooray, hip, hip, hooray, like it's a Jewish wedding, and I'm going to have the greatest time of my life. And it's never quite achieve that.
No, it actually is infuriating. That's why I exclusively watch horror movies with Matt. I will only watch horror movies with Matt or trauma movies, because when Matt shows up to my parents' house and I'm there and we're watching like a very serious movie and it's a very serious scene that needs your full attention, he'll just go, oh, you know who that is? That's the guy from this and that. And then he like looks up and like in the middle of the movie, he's like, so do you know how they made this movie? Because as soon as the movie starts, he's got to Wikipedia it. So he's...
I can't even rebuttal because that's so accurate and true. Son of a bitch.
So I have to watch movies I don't care about with my brother.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is that's what I do as well. It's just so funny because it's the most honest Matt, who is a super honest person on the show, but the most honest Matt has ever been on the show is being like, I really just want people to think I'm fun and cool, you know?
Just desperately. Just so desperately. So this movie is one of those movies where I don't know where it came from. I have no clue anything about this movie.
Finding this movie was hard, too.
Yeah, I know that like the IMDb trivia, most of it is just all of the actors talking about how high, stoned, and drunk they were while making this movie. Like, this was like a party set for them, basically. And also, not shocking, Christopher Lee's scenes were all shot in a single day.
Of course.
That's pretty obvious. But this movie bounces between like actually being kind of a fun, like the kills are really fun. It's like the same reason why you enjoy a Freddy movie is that the Funnyman's powers are so over the top that like
he can do anything. He can do nothing. Like
yeah,
exactly. He's like Kmart Freddy Krueger.
Yes, very much so. But then it's also like very poorly made. Like it's like simultaneously it's a bad movie. And I actually posted a TikTok while I was watching this movie of the actor driving the van while talking in one of the opening scenes, because he is like, first of all, like the whole car is shaking back and forth as if he's sitting in a stationary vehicle and there are just like 10 teenagers on both sides just rocking it back and forth so it looks like it's moving. But then he's doing that like comical driving where you're just like moving your arms back and forth really quickly, like how no human being has ever driven a car.
I like how that took you out of the story when, like, you know, when I watch SNL skits as a child and I see people driving like that, I'm like, that's just how you drive.
Well, that's how Toots the Driving Cat drives, and that's totally understandable.
See, I wanted to say Toots is the driving cat. I was like, that is too obscure of a reference for even Matt Kelly. Stupid, stupid of me to think that.
How dare you? There's also a character who I feel like is intentionally dressed as Velma from Scooby-Doo in this movie.
Yes, there's nothing subtle about it. They're like, here, put this on, this dumpy-ass Velma cosplay. And, you know, like, I have a note that says, you know, top-notch Velma cosplay, because it's so bad. But it also is just, I feel like Velma cosplays have been perverted by TikTok in particular, because there are very voluptuous women who are like on there just dressed as Velma because it's Thursday. You know, it's not Halloween. It's not, you know, they're like, I'm just going to be the sexy Velma. And it's, I don't get it. Why Velma?
Glasses.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, it's because like nerd chic now. You know what I mean? Like everyone's like, no, you don't want to be Daphne. You want to be the hot nerd. Like let's hotten up Velma.
Wasn't this movie from like 1994?
Well, I think this is just, hey, this girl kind of looks like Velma. Let's just throw on the sweater and skirt to finish the look.
Confusing. I just don't understand. There are so many choices that this movie made that are completely incomprehensible.
No, I mean, the plot to this movie is incomprehensible. Like, so it starts with a poker game.
I've seen amputees with better hands than this.
Christopher Lee, like, I don't understand. I don't understand how like the Christopher Lee stuff even connects. Honestly,
it was the one guy's brother, isn't it? Oh no. No. Christopher Lee is
he like loses a hand in poker and they get to go to this mansion or something.
No, he intentionally loses this hand of poker to give the castle or whatever, the abbey that they go to for the entire movie, over to the guy who he and his wife and kid get killed early on, and then all of the God damn, I'm looking through my notes trying to see like the name of.
It's a real Spookies energy almost, where it feels like two separate movies have been like smushed together.
Yeah, I feel like there's some sort of through line, but it made sense enough that it was the guy who won the castle from Christopher Lee. His brother is coming to drop off the guitar or something like that. And then Christopher Lee is like watching. And so I think that Christopher Lee is some sort of demonic presence, and Punch, or Funnyman, is kind of his demon buddy who just gets to go crazy in the castle. I don't know. That's what I took from it.
He, like... Funnyman pops up into this movie, and then from that point on, it is like Beetlejuice or Howie Mandel and Little Monsters, where you can tell that they're just like, just let him go. Like, just let this actor do whatever he wants, and we'll figure it out. Like, there's a scene where he's pissing, and it is like the most comical stream. Like, it's like a fire hose is blowing out of his
codpiece. God damn. That is perfect comedy. You know what else is perfect comedy that's not actually Funnyman is the kid gets killed first, I believe, because he's like, "Oh, mommy, daddy, are you having sexual intercourse?"
Yeah,
and then he gets killed.
Intercourse.
Yeah. So he gets killed, and then the dad gets killed, I want to say, and then the mom, she sees Funnyman, and then she does this hilarious, like intentionally hilarious slow walk, like reverse walk away from Funnyman, and it made me laugh so much harder than any Funnyman line, because a lot of his lines, I feel like they're supposed to be anti-joke type humor. And very,
I think
very
the joke
British.
Is that Funnyman is not particularly funny. And yes, this is an extremely British movie. But then, like, I feel like the kills do continue to ramp up, where it's like the very first one it's like a bloody movie. There's like a lot of gore in this movie, pretty much from the first kill. But then you get towards like the later half of this movie, where like a girl's eyeballs and brain just explode out of the front of her face. Like,
fantastic.
Like that happens. There's the guy who's like in the Punch and Judy show, but it's like he's buried up to his nose with a bomb on top of his head, and then the bomb explodes, and it's just like his lower jaw and the rest of his body just drops to the ground. Like, it is so gross the way some of these people get killed. It also makes zero sense. It's so complicated, but man.
But then
like,
there's also the what is she? She's like
the medium or whatever.
She's like a medium, yeah, and she's like walking around. She's like got a shitty Jamaican accent or something, and like at first I could live with it because there were so many other insane accents in the movie, but then once it gets down to her versus Funnyman, I'm just thinking like I'm done. Can he just kill her, you know, like, but he doesn't.
And boy does he does that birth scene with her, and it's like,
oh, that's right, I didn't write that down.
Gross.
Yeah,
it is so gross.
And also, like, I understand that Funnyman is supposed to be like Punch, because there is a legit Punch and Judy show in the movie before the guy with the bomb on his head gets turned into, you know, a bloody jawline. And Punch is supposed to be sadistic and kind of like misogynistic and things like that. I get it. I don't quite understand Punch and Judy as a piece of culture, but I'm also not British, so
and that is a very British thing.
Yeah, it's like the most British thing the Brits have ever had. But besides tea and crumpets, I just don't quite understand.
So, and here's another thing. Here's something that's worth noting. There's not a ton on the trivia page, but the one big one is that this was initially made as a serious horror film. However, when the actor Tim James, who plays Funnyman, showed up, he started to really evolve the character as being like a dark anti-comedy type character. So much so that they just threw out the script and improvised the rest of the movie once Funnyman shows up, which completely makes sense as you're watching it because it gets to mean like things matter less and less as the movie goes on. You're just like, yeah, no, all of this is inconsequential. I'll tell you what I could have done without is the Funnyman striptease scene that went really long and was very uncomfortable.
That's what I'm talking about. Like, it's just so grandpa joke level weirdness. And he's got like gigantic fake boobs. And the guy who played Funnyman has very muscular thighs. They made him shave them for that scene. There's so much fourth wall breaking too that I'm just... This movie is a tornado of emotions for me. You go from really enjoying some kills to just being like, will this scene ever end? And I don't know. I have feelings, but I can't. I have to compartmentalize them, you know?
I feel like us simply mentioning this movie on Horror Movie Night, which has a modest audience, will be the most attention that this movie has gotten since it came out in 1994.
Let's not be too crazy. I mean, it did have Christopher Lee, although at the trough of his pre-Lord of the Rings Saruman
his 90s
days,
career is insane.
It's pretty rough. The daughter is playing Game Boy or something, right? And she's like playing it in a room, sitting in a chair in the middle of a room, which is definitely how you would play Game Boy in 1994. And she goes, jump, jump. Funnyman comes in, and I think he jumps a little bit. And then he's like, no. He like gets the light bulb. He does the finger to the sky, and then he gets jumper cables and lights are on fire.
Yep.
And that scene, they spent a lot of money on that scene. Then there's like a lot of pyrotechnics in this movie. So like that scene, and then when the voodoo lady, her hand somehow morphs into a cannon after she shoots heroin in it, or I don't quite know. I don't know, man. It is such a weird film, and everything is... Nothing matters, like you said, but there's just so much pyrotechnics in that little village where she and Funnyman are battling it out. And the funnier thing about Funnyman is that they spent all this money on pyrotechnics and didn't have any money for a good guitar for the guy's scene when he has his like
his rock and roll dream.
His rock and roll dream, yeah. They have like this probably, no-name Fender rip-off guitar. They obviously, had it as the white guitar in the beginning. They didn't have a second guitar. So they had one guitar that they probably bought for like, $50. Then they spray painted it gold and put gold glitter on it. And it is the worst prop and effect I've seen in a Horror Movie Night movie in so long.
I want to ask a question to Brian, because we all know that Brian's got a crazy schedule. And sometimes, him being able to watch the movie is a 50-50 a lot of the time. I'm curious, A, if he was able to watch the movie, and B, if he wasn't able to watch the movie, has he been able to follow a single thing?
I haven't watched the movie. I have Wikipedia'd the movie, so I'm able to follow along. I have Googled the movie, and I did, I was like, man, I kind of wish I would have watched that movie. Because he does look like a weird hybrid. Like if you just took Wishmaster and Killjoy
and just melded them into a single character. Yep, I can see that.
He is Wishmaster with Killjoy's hairdo. I really wish I would have watched it.
I texted you. I said if you can only watch one of the two, I think you're going to have a lot more to say about Funnyman.
Well, I didn't choose not to watch it.
No, you have we'll get into that next week for sure.
And I feel like this is the most British thing I've ever watched. I watched a lot of Monty Python, and I think a lot of Monty Python is anti-joke kind of humor, but this is just like unrefined Monty Python without any actual committee to say, hey, we should probably cut that joke because it's not funny, or it goes nowhere, or it's kind of mean, or all these things. And he's just like, the guy who played Funnyman had complete reign over this movie except for the pyrotechnics. So
I would say imagine in Monty Python and the Meaning of Life, I never remember the character's name, but there's the sketch about the extremely large man going out to dinner. And then at the end of it...
one small wafer.
Yeah, it's paper thin. And he takes the wafer and then he explodes and there's gore splattered all over the restaurant. And it's this giant cavernous body cavity with a head still on it and a tiny beating heart. That's Funnyman for 90 minutes. Like,
yeah, and that is arguably my least favorite skit that I've ever seen from Monty Python. And
it's so gross.
Famous, and
it is so gross.
I think that was what they were going for with it, obviously, but I think that with Funnyman, we can't give them that kind of direction. Like they didn't have a direction. It was literally, we've got this cast and we got this guy who's just gonna do his best British Freddie impression for a month, and we're gonna put it together into basically a kill compilation.
Yep, I mean, that's what it is. So let's dive into the double features at that point. Obviously, this was my pick, so I'll go first. I'm gonna go for a layup here. I'm gonna do Dolls, because it also is a horror film that has a lot of Punch and Judy imagery throughout.
And I have a note that says this is canonically the second movie that Matt Kelly has picked for Horror Movie Night that has Punch and Judy in it. And the funniest thing about that is that you've picked Dolls twice for Horror Movie Night.
I love that movie. It's a very important movie to me.
Oh, I do too. I'll do mine, but even though Brian hasn't watched this, Brian, I want you to imagine that you're going to watch Punch and Judy for the first time, but you're going to watch it in a double feature. So I'm going to go with Elvira, because I love Elvira, and I feel like some of her humor is that very dry, at least in the movie. It's just kind of like, it's not anti-humor as much as Funnyman, but it's very dry, it's very sarcastic. And also she kind of breaks fourth wall a bit in that movie. You know, I start with Funnyman, and then I'd polish the night off with Elvira, because you cannot end, no night ending with Elvira is bad.
Fair. All right, Brian, if you're sitting down, I'm like, Brian, since you're home, I'm going to make you watch Funnyman. I'm going to talk over top of it and tell you all the fun facts, but I'll let you pick the second movie that we watch. From what you've heard about Funnyman, what are you putting on?
So I know nothing about Funnyman. So I'm going to go based off what I do know about Funnyman, and I'm going to say, I know Matt and Scott thought Funnyman by itself, standalone, was not a good movie. But what I'm assuming this movie's about is if you add multiple of them, you'll get Funny People, starring Adam Sandler. So that would be my double feature.
All right, so we'll dive into the what did we watch this week. I'm going to do something a little different. So I was hanging out with friends last night, and we watched the movie Haunt, which fits a little bit with the vibe of Funnyman, actually. But Haunt is a very mediocre movie, all in all, for me. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It's on Shudder.
Oh, yeah. Did you watch that last year when it came out?
I think so, and I didn't remember anything about it. But
I think we're Goldilocksing it, although I didn't love it. I think Scott hated it.
I absolutely hated it.
Me, just whatever on it, and I thought it was good enough.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't miserable while watching it, but I'll absolutely never watch it again. But it gave me an idea for a screenplay that I wanna write one day. I want to do the Tucker and Dale version of Haunt, where it is just a haunted attraction and nothing nefarious is happening, but a bunch of asshole teenagers are so convinced that there's something sinister going on that they just murder all of the people working at the haunted attraction.
No, Matt, it's not a Matt Kelly movie if it's a haunted attraction. It's got to have a dark ride.
It's got to have a dark ride. But as I was watching it, there was like a certain part of me where they bump into a character named Mitch, and Mitch seems to be like actually trying to help them. You know that he's not. Like at this point, you're like, he's also in on it. What's his angle? Whatever. But I'm like, what if he's telling the truth? What if his explanation that what they saw with their one friend was just part of the show, and she's outside waiting for them, and they're like just completely fucking up everything for everybody because they won't listen to him, and then like the movie ends like a news report where it's like a group of teenagers massacred a group of innocent teenagers just trying to put on a fun little haunted house attraction. It's like the parents like, they just wanted to scare people. Why? Like,
have you seen Fear Inc?
Yes.
That's good. That's a better haunt horror movie.
As much as I hate found footage, I liked Hell House LLC.
Yeah,
actually,
I liked Hell House LLC
for like a creepy haunted attraction movie. That one was pretty
I
decent.
liked Fear Inc. and Haunt. I got to give credit to Haunt because the end credit song was at my wedding. Although me and you both missed
the
it.
slow piano version of Dracula.
Yeah, that was during hors d'oeuvres.
Tonally, that doesn't make any sense with the rest of that movie. Also, but
No.
They were just
fine.
so excited that they got the rights to use Dracula in any sense of the way song, so that they were like, just toss it on this one.
Yeah, pretty much. All right, how about you guys?
I watched VHS 94. I didn't hate it. I think that my enjoyment of VHS 94 is directly correlated to my displeasure watching Halloween Kills. I hated Halloween Kills so much that the bar was so low that there was almost no way for VHS 94 not to just leap over it. I don't think I really disliked the wraparound story for VHS 94. You don't need to reinvent the wheel every time with the acting is never going to be good in a VHS movie, and so we need to focus on leaning harder.
When we make one,
us,
yeah,
but when we make our own VHS. No, but I feel like the people who produce VHS movies need to just really lean into the fact that they are goofy as hell. I liked the goofiness of some parts of each one of the segments inside of the wraparound, but I really have to give an admonishment to the first one. The concept is that this TV crew goes down in the storm drains and they're talking to basically, like the chud. Yeah. They're not actually chud, but they have like a rat god down there, more or less. I have to admonish whoever made that for not giving credit where credit is due, because they absolutely stole WNUF Halloween specials mojo. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, and Chris, that's a feather in your cap, because someone loves what you do so much that they're willing to throw caution to the wind and do a really poor impression of what you do with your movies. So there we go.
All right, Brian, let me throw to you, because the people who are watching the video that are paying on Patreon, I noticed a very clear visual cue, and you already made the Goldilocks comparison once with Haunt, but I think when it comes to Halloween Kills, there's also a Goldilocks situation happening where one of us hated it, one of us thought it was just all right, and I think you over there loved it.
I wouldn't say loved it. I definitely wouldn't say loved it. I enjoyed it, and I had a lot of fun watching it. As everyone knows, Halloween is my favorite horror franchise.
Yeah.
Some people, when they have their favorite franchise, they either hold it to a higher standard or they're more forgiving. I am definitely of the more forgiving aspect. I think a big part of the reason, I'm not defending it for not being a great story, but I think a part of the reason that everyone hates it is like Halloween 2018 was so fucking good.
Coming from the guy who also likes the Rob Zombie Halloween movies, though, so
Rob Zombie's Halloween is not as bad as the remake of Poltergeist. Have you watched the Poltergeist remake?
Not yet. I want to, just because I want to see how bad it is, because I've heard nothing but like it is unwatchable.
Imagine if they remade Jaws, but it played out like Halloween Kills. Right, which misses like the entire mark of Jaws, right?
Yeah.
Like Spielberg's short-lived horror. It's all about like the tension, the suspense, the feelings of individuals. Completely throws it out the window.
I'm excited to see how bad it is. But
the only other thing I watched, because I only have like 10 minutes a day, is I was a big Jackass fan growing up. So I've been slowly watching the movies, and then I started rewatching the show, and I cannot recommend the show to anyone outside of like die-hard skate videos, because that's really what the show is. It's like you forget because you look at the movies. The show is so different from the movies. You would hate skate videos, Matt, because you, like you said, you love talking to people about things. Matt.
Yeah.
Matt, mildly autistic, tastefully talkative. Matt.
Holy shit! Have you been sitting on that?
No, it just kind of... The cool thing about it was like skate videos, like those VHS tapes, is like they were like getting your own one-off thing. Like you and your friends that had that tape, if you were to travel and be like, hey, did you ever see the skate tape? Like nobody fucking saw it. Right? Yeah. Like you guys just somehow got your hands on a random skateboarding tape of like minor. Now, obviously there's like celebrity, like there was a Chad Muska skate tape that I had, but I'm like old school skate tapes that had like the bad dubbing and shit. They were like treasures to me. And that's what rewatching Jackass does. But I literally put it on and be like, I'm going to watch one episode and go to bed. And I'm just so exhausted. I literally made it like 8 minutes per night, but it still brings me back joy.
But all right, well, that was Funnyman from 1994. Tune in next week for one of Scott's picks, and we may have to say goodbye to a friend for a little bit. So stay tuned for that.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network. You're listening to the Geekscape Network.